Hi everyone, I'm Lisa with Teens in the Driver's Seat. Did you know that car crashes were the leading cause of injury and death for young people? Today we're going to cover one of the many risk factors for teen drivers, which is distracted driving. In the most recent survey done by driversed.com, 55% of users responded that they check social media while driving. This is a disturbing statistic and something that, when teen drivers engage in particularly, can be dangerous. This video is going to be the first of a series, so we hope you learn something and take something away from it to help make better decisions behind the wheel. So let's go ahead and get started and talk about distracted driving.
Distracted driving is a significant issue. We know that annually, car crashes are the leading cause of injury and death for teens. And on average, we lose 2,700 teens every year to crashes. And that does not include the thousands that are injured every year. To put that into perspective, that'd be the equivalent of a school bus full of teens crashing every week for an entire year. We know the fundamental reason that teens crash or are at a higher risk for a crash is driver inexperience. Now, I know many of you out there are maybe learning how to drive or have just recently learned how to drive, but it's a difficult thing to do. You have to take advantage, you have to pay attention to everything around you, inside and outside of the car. And I know you can't see me, but I know personally, I may have hit a thing or two that was parked. So it's a hard thing to do. When you take into the consideration that you're still learning how to drive and you introduce what we like to call risk factors, crash risk goes up. So we're not going to cover them all today, but I just wanted to make everybody aware. We know there are 5 main contributing risk factors for teen drivers, the first of which is distractions. The second of which is nighttime drowsy driving, so things like falling asleep behind the wheel or crashing at night. Speeding and racing is our third risk factor. Our fourth risk factor is low seatbelt use, and this is particularly true for teen passengers. And lastly, impaired driving. So this will be the first of a series, so please keep a lookout for those videos as they become available, and be sure to watch them to learn as much as you can about each risk. So the problem for distracted driving specifically. Did you know that 1 out of every 10 teens involved in a fatal crash was distracted at the time of the crash? Now, a lot of times we like to think that we're multitaskers, and I'm here today to tell you that that is definitely not the case. So I want you to do me a favor and stand up. Now, I know it's weird because I can't see that you're standing up or not, so I'm just going to trust that you are. And I'm going to read you a story, and this is the story of the Wright family. What you'll need to do, and these are your only instructions, is when you hear the word right, move to your right. When you hear the word left, move to your left. Now, if you want to make it a little more challenging, when you move to your right, raise your left hand, and when you move to your left, raise your right hand. You don't have to do that, but definitely an option. So, here we go. Life with the Wright family. One day, the Wright family decided to take a vacation. The first thing they had to decide was who would be left at home since there was not enough room in the Wright family car. Mr. Wright decided that Aunt Linda Wright would be the one left at home. Of course, this made Aunt Linda Wright so mad she left the house immediately yelling, "It'll be a right cold day before I return." The Wright family now bundled up the children, Tommy Wright, Susan Wright, Timmy Wright, and Shelley Wright, and got in the car and left. Unfortunately, as they turned out of the driveway, someone had left the trash can on the street, so they had to turn right around and stop the car. They told Tommy Wright to get out of the car and move the trash so they could get going. Tommy took so long they almost left him on the street. As they turned right on the corner, everyone started to think about all the things that they might have left undone. No need to worry now, they were off on a right fine vacation. When they arrived at the gas station, though, Father Wright went to put gas in the car, then discovered he had left his wallet at home. So Timmy Wright ran home to get the money that was left behind. After Timmy had left, Susan Wright started to feel sick. She left the car saying that she had to throw up. This, of course, got Mother Wright's attention, and she left the car in a hurry. Shelley Wright wanted to watch Susan get sick, so she left the car too. Father Wright was left with Tommy Wright, who was playing a game in the back seat. With all of this going on, Father Wright decided this was not the right time to take a vacation, so he gathered up his family and left the gas station. When he arrived home, he turned left into the driveway and said, I wish the Wright family had never left the house today. Right? Okay, end of the story. Go ahead and sit down if you humored me, which I hope you did. So some discussions after this to think about, was this difficult? What parts of the story can you remember? Can you get specific and think, who was left behind? Which person got sick and needed to get out of the car? If you're struggling to answer those questions, don't feel bad. It's hard for most of us. And the reason why it's difficult for us to remember this is because you as a person were asked to focus on one task, and that was move one way when you heard one direction and move the other way when you heard the other direction. Our brains are not really truly able to multitask. That is the lesson here. When you're focusing on one thing, your brain makes everything else seem less important. So hearing who got sick, hearing who left the car, who got left behind, which is Aunt Linda Wright, in case you were wondering. And the person that got sick was Shelly, in case you were wondering about that. But needless to say, it's really difficult. And when you're trying to introduce distractions inside of a moving vehicle, you're really testing the limits of what you can and cannot do. So when we talk distractions, what types are we really thinking about? Well, there's three that we focus on, the first of which is visual. Driving requires your eyesight and is a very visual task. So a distraction is anything that takes your eyes off of the driving task. So these could be things like navigation systems, looking down on the floor for something, looking out into the window around the world and looking at different things could even cause a distraction. The reason being is your eyes are not focused on maintaining your distance, staying in your lane, things that are very important to avoid a crash. The second type of distraction is a manual distraction. So these are things that physically remove your hands from the steering wheel. Things like eating, putting on makeup could easily take your hands off the steering wheel and increase the probability of a wreck. And lastly is cognitive distractions. And these are actually some of the more complicated distractions because this is essentially a mental distraction. Anything that takes your mind off of the driving task, which is dangerous because things like daydreaming, having conversations, even just, thinking about what you're going to make for dinner that night could be a cognitive distraction from your driving. And along with this, we know that having teens in the car could also be a type of cognitive distraction as well. And we'll talk a little bit about why that's so dangerous. But thinking along cell phones, we know that cell phones can impact all three of these at various levels. So TTI did a study that essentially tried to identify how much of a crash risk a person is involved at the more that they interact with their cell phones. And what they found is someone who's using a cell phone hands-free is 4 times more likely to be involved in a crash. As they engage more with the cell phone, so holding a cell phone and talking on the cell phone, which is a cognitive and manual distraction, they're up to 6 times more likely to be involved in a crash. And lastly, the most dangerous interaction with a cell phone, texting or using social media of any kind, involves all 3 types of distractions, so cognitive, manual, and visual, and results in 23 times more likely to be involved in a crash. So the lesson is, the more you engage with your cell phone, the higher your crash risk. But using your cell phone, period, puts you at a risk for crash. So don't do it. We also know that teens and teens can be a deadly combination. When teens ride with their peers, they're 3 to 5 times more likely to crash. Now, I know all of you, when you're driving with your friends, are sitting quietly listening to classical music and pointing out all the stop signs, right? No, of course not. Teens are talking, you're talking about your day, you're maybe car dancing, singing songs. There's just a lot that happens in the car. And unfortunately, while it may be fun, it's putting your lives at risk. So know your graduated driver's licensing laws. Many of these laws have restrictions on cell phones. So for example, within the state of Texas, teens are not allowed to use their cell phones until the age of 18 behind the wheel. There's also passenger restrictions. Most states limit the number of passengers to 1 if you're riding in a car without an adult present. But the best thing for you to do is to visit your local Department of Transportation to get all the facts. So, what does this all mean for you? Well, we know that peer-to-peer works. We want you to share this awareness with your peers to help decrease the number of teens involved in fatal crashes. Teens in the Driver's Seat is a program that can help you do that. And we have guidance that is provided to us by our Teen Advisory Board, so a board of your peers that helps give us guidance on what works and what doesn't. And the science is provided by the Texas Transportation Institute, which is us. We hope that you would join us in this battle to drive down car crashes and start a program at your school if it hasn't already been started, or if it has, consider joining it. So the last thing we're going to do is do some quick questions to see what you've learned today. So question number 1, what is the fundamental reason teen drivers are at high risk for crash? A, distractions, B, driver inexperience, or C, impaired driving? I'm going to give you a few seconds. And the answer is B. Remember, anything that you do puts you at an even higher risk because you're still learning how to drive. All right, question number 2. What type of distraction is a cell phone? A, manual, B, visual, C, cognitive, D, can be all 3. All right, if you answered D, can be all 3, you are right. So texting, using social media, emails, that involves all 3 types of distractions and can be the most dangerous. So lesson here, don't do it. Last question, true or false? Riding with teen peer passengers can increase your risk of being involved in a crash. A, true, B, false. And the answer is true. Riding with your friends can increase your crash risk. Always try to limit your passenger to 1 person or ensure that they're being a responsible passenger and not distracting you from the driving task. Thank you again for taking some time to watch this video. We all only have one life on this road, and I hope you use it wisely and ensure that you live another day to help others and make good decisions on the road. If you want more information, please visit our website, t-driver.com, to learn more about distracted driving and how you can be safe on the road. Thanks.